Word. Hello, welcome to the podcast of the Healing Trauma Meditation Center. This video will discuss how to cope with intrusive thoughts. Well, intrusive thoughts are very common among trauma survivors. It can be memory flashback of the traumatic event, or it could be just random thoughts that's distressing, may or may not related to the traumatic event. Either way, intrusive thoughts, the experience of having these intrusive thoughts can be very stressful and distressing for trauma survivors. Um, the fact that we have no control over our thoughts um, can feel devastating. Um, so how do we cope with intrusive thoughts? First of all, let's understand intrusive thoughts. The human mind are constantly generating thoughts. The fact is that nobody has total control over what kind of thoughts come up. The only difference is that when your mind is healthy and you're in a good mood, you can easily disregard the thoughts that came up that you don't like. For example, if you're on vacation, laying in the beach, enjoying the sunlight, uh, and then suddenly a random thoughts come up like, "Hey, I wonder whether turned I turned off the stove at home when I left." Okay, that's slightly distressing, but you know, if you're healthy and having a good time, you're like, I wouldn't worry about it. I'm sure I did. So you wouldn't dwell on this thought. You wouldn't keep thinking about it, and you wouldn't let it ruin your vacation. Um, and it's just one of the many, many thoughts that came up every day for everyone. So the difference comes when the mind is not so healthy. If we have PTSD or depression or anxiety disorders, to the extent that the mind is not able to disregard the distressing random thoughts that pop up, and that's when it becomes a problem. For example, again, using this example of thinking about, oh, whether I turned off the stove when I left for my vacation. Someone with, let's say, OCD would be like, I have to make sure I actually turned off the stove. So I'm gonna maybe call my friend and relative to go check on it and check it on again. And maybe to the extent that I may just quit the vacation and fly home and just to make sure the stove is turned off. So that is an extreme example of how a random thought can have so much power over us. So you now see the solution to cope with intrusive thoughts is do not give it so much power. In a way, yes, many of us trauma survivors do feel our thoughts are out of control. And that's already a very distressing news. But bear in mind what I said earlier, nobody has total control of their thoughts. So the fact that we trauma survivors feel our thoughts are out of control is not the problem. The problem is our desire to have complete control over our thoughts and the difficulty we have with disregarding the unwanted thoughts. So again, the problem is not having total control over our thoughts that just randomly come up. The problem is how to disregard the distressing thoughts and how to let go of the desire to have total control. Okay, so now we are on to the question of why do we have the desire to have total control and how to let go the desire of having total control. Okay, so this is a very good question. There is research that shows, for example, children who had experienced childhood trauma has the tendency of having a sense of being overly responsible for things around them. Like, my parents got a divorce, it's my fault. Or, anything that happened in my childhood, like someone abused me and that's my fault. Like this overly generalized sense of responsibility is a common symptom among childhood trauma survivors. And when we, really explore why and how that come about, it comes to the desire of our mind to have some control. Okay, so there is this fundamental differentiation between the fact that we do not have control over our external world. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that we do not have absolute control over the external world. And our mind needs to feel safe enough to feel that we have enough control over enough things to feel safe, to feel that we are in a safe, predictable environment so that we don't have to constantly look around on alert, hypervigilant, and constantly on the fight and flight response. So we need enough a sense of sort of almost illusionary control over our environment to feel safe. So think about, an infant. When the infant, before, in the beginning years, the infant feels that they're in control. Like every time they cry, somebody comes over to take care of them, whether that's giving them food or cleaning their diaper. And, every time they cry, somebody would come over, and that cause and effect creates the illusion for the infant that, hey, they have so much control over Their environment, all they need to do is to cry and they will get everything they need. So they are so powerful. And that illusion is critical for the infant to feel safe and relaxed and grow up um, in a in a safe, subjectively safe environment, and not having to grow up with constant stress and anxiety. So this illusion is almost critical for the infant's survival. So now let's, go back to the internal lives of adult humans. Okay, so by the time we're adults, we already realize we're not the center of the universe, and we absolutely do not have total control over our environments. And of course, things don't just magically happen every time we cry. So as adults, we understand that, but still, at the bottom of our heart, we still need some sense of safety, some sense of reliability and predictability in our environment to feel safe, to feel, again, we don't have to constantly live in anxiety and fear and constantly on fight and flight, which is exhausting, right? You all know what I mean. It is exhausting to constantly feel anxious, to constantly feel you're not safe, to look for where will be a safe place. It's exhausting life. So nobody wants to live that way. So we need the illusion of control to feel safe, so that we don't have to be on fight and flight all the time. And so then what trauma does, okay, when a traumatic event happens, what trauma does is to shatter that illusion. Because when you think about it, a traumatic event is an event that is often unexpected. So that totally shatters our illusion on the predictability of the external world, because the trauma happens is totally unpredictable and it just happened. We did not plan it, it just happened. And also it's so strong, such a strong emotional event that totally devastated us. And the unpredictability aspect and the severity of the event together shatters our illusion of safety and having a sense of control. So then, because this illusion is shattered, now our mind has the desire to find something else, to find new information from our environment to help us feel safe. Okay, so you can imagine the mind is, constantly scanning our environment and see, hey, what do I have control over? Give me something. Hello, give me something. Okay, do I have control over my stove? Do I have control over locking my door? Do I have control over what I wear? Do I have control over the temperature from the faucet? What do I have control over? I just need something. Please do me a favor. Give me something. Give me enough information to make me feel that I have some control over the environment so that I can relax a little bit. Okay, so that my anxiety can relax a little bit, and I'm not in constant fear and anxiety. So we are desperately looking from our environment for things that we have control over, and that's why, again, going back to the intrusive thoughts, that's why it's so distressing when we experience intrusive thoughts. Again, as I said earlier, everybody has quote unquote intrusive thoughts. Everybody has thoughts that pop up in their head that they did not plan to have. Okay, thoughts are just thoughts. Our brain is constantly generating thoughts, and it's not always a conscious process to generate a new thought. Like, hey, what I'm gonna think about. I'm gonna think about what I'm gonna think about. That's not how the mind works. So it is a natural phenomenon for random thoughts to come up in our brain. But as trauma survivors, it bothers us more because this is like almost another example of not having control. In this case, it's not just over the external environment. In this case, it's over our internal experience. You would think that we have control over what we think, right? So it's a total surprise to realize that, hey, I don't even have control over my own thoughts. And that's just so sad and upsetting. And I totally get it. Again, the fact is nobody has control over our thoughts. So let's keep that in mind. And then also becoming aware that it's upsetting to us. The fact that we don't have control over our thoughts is upsetting to us because our trauma experience, because our strong desire to have some control over something. Okay, so once we are aware of that, once we are aware that that we nobody has control over their thoughts, number one, and number two, the reason we are upset about having intrusive thoughts is because of our strong desire to have control, and we understand why we have that desire. So bearing this, the awareness of these two aspects in mind, and that will set the stage for us to be able to let go the desire for having control. So now that we understand why we needed to have control, and give that part of us, the part that's really looking for something to have control over, give that part a lot of compassion. Like, hey, I hear you. I know why you feel this way. I know, I understand how hard it is to feel that you don't have control over anything. I totally understand, and I feel you. Um, and then come to the understanding that it's okay to not have total control over everything. It's okay to not have total control even over our own thoughts. And I'm not the only one who doesn't have total control of my own thoughts. That pretty much happens to everybody. So I'm not the rare, the unique. So this not just happened to me, it happens to everybody. So it's not just me. It does not mean there's something wrong with me. It's just a natural human experience to not have control. So with all this understanding in your mind, and it would help us to be able to not give the intrusive thoughts so much power. And then the next time it comes up, what we can do is, okay, I notice a thought. I notice a thought, maybe it's a memory of the traumatic event, or maybe it's just some random thoughts that's distressing. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna just simply nod and say hello. Okay, hi thoughts. Um, I notice you come up, but I'm not gonna give it that much power. So whatever is saying, it's just a thought. A thought is just a thought. It's just a thought. A thought is just a thought. It does not mean we have to act on it. It does not mean we have to listen to it and do what it says. It does not mean we're a bad person for having a bad thought. It does not mean anything. It's just a neuron activity in our brain. That's all it is. So we don't have to give it any power at all. So, okay, so there's a thought. Yeah, I had a thought. Then I move on to have my breakfast, to take a walk, to do my work, um, to take care of my children, whatever I need to do in my life. I'm not going to dwell on this thought and let this thought ruin my life. Okay, so after we understand, why intrusive thoughts come up, why they appear intrusive, the fact that everybody experiences them, and finally, the fact that we do have control over how much power we decide to give these thoughts. Bearing in mind all of this will help us cope with intrusive thoughts and live a balanced, healthy life. So hope this is helpful for you, and feel free to leave any comments. And again, this is the podcast series from the Healing Trauma Meditation Center. My name is Diane. Feel free to subscribe to our channel, and feel free to contact us at the information on the screen. I look forward to seeing you again. Till next time.